Hello there and welcome to the Coffee with Colm, and thank you for joining me. The reason I'm smirking as I start this is because the title of this is Measure Twice and Cut Once, and it really alludes to that saying that we're all aware of, fail to prepare and prepare to fail. And I've just recorded this video and this podcast and realised that I hadn't plugged the mic in, so I'm recording it again. So anyway, there you go. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Anyway, you all know the phrase measure twice and cut once, I'm sure. I think it comes from the world of carpentry, and it makes perfect sense. In the world of carpentry, if you've got a piece of wood that you need to cut to a particular size to fit in a particular location and you get it wrong, well then you've got a problem. So it makes perfect sense to check your measurements and check them again before you actually apply a saw. And the phrase measure twice and cut once came to me in no uncertain terms following a speech that I made very recently, and I'd like to share the story if I may. A little embarrassing for me, but I'd like to share it on the basis that I think there are lessons in it for you and I. Anyway, I was asked to make a speech recently. Making speeches isn't typically a problem, but I was asked to make a very important speech, not usually a problem, a very short speech, usually a problem, let's face it, right? And I had 3 minutes to get a particular message in, and the culmination of my particular message in 3 minutes was to introduce a very special guest to the audience. So I put a lot of preparation into it. I made sure that I had my message fully on point. I made sure I knew everything I needed to know about the special guest. And then I practiced and I visualized, as we all do, and I was fully confident stepping up to the microphone for my 3 minutes. And I had envisaged the audience would be fully engaged, that my speech would flow, it would be on point, there'd be a few giggles, everything would be great, and I'd pass the microphone seamlessly to the special guest. And it started off like that, and the audience was fully engaged, and there were a few giggles, and everything was going swimmingly for about 2 minutes of the 3 minutes. And just as I got into the part of my 3 minute speech where I was to introduce the special guest, I decided to throw in 2 facts. And the first fact I threw in was wrong. Threw in a fact to introduce my special guest, and everybody in the room except me knew the fact was wrong, and they told me in no uncertain terms that they knew the fact was wrong, and I lost them. They left. They started murmuring amongst themselves. I was mortified, but of course I'm a professional, so I sort of bounced with it, got on with it, and finished the speech and passed the microphone over to the special guest and stepped out, and everything seemed to be fine. And the special guest, also professional, decided that he'd take a little poke at me, so he humorously touched on the facts that I'd gotten wrong. We all had a laugh and everything was grand, except I was mortified. Later in the evening, we had a great evening, we had a great night, and then later in the evening, as the special guest was leaving, I was saying thank you to him and goodbye to him, and apologising to him for getting the fact wrong. And wait till you hear this. He says to me, that wasn't the only fact wrong, you got this other fact wrong. I got 2 facts wrong, introducing a very special guest to a very particular audience in 3 minutes. Could not believe it. Nowhere near good enough. Of course, he said, listen, don't worry about it. What am I to do? Of course I'm going to worry about it. Now, there's nothing I can do about it. But of course I'm going to worry about it, and I've made my peace with the guy, I've made my peace with myself for making such a faux pas, but the problem was all mine. I didn't prepare hard enough. I thought I had, but I didn't prepare hard enough. And it was very simple. If I'd measured twice and cut once, if I'd taken my speech and my facts to some others that were involved and said, here, check this out, they would have picked up immediately. Those 2 facts are wrong, and I wouldn't have made the mistake. I measured once in this particular case. I measured once and I applied the saw. I should have measured twice and then cut once. Anyway, can't turn the clock back. It is what it is. It's not going to happen again, but it happened, and I want you to learn from it. Of course, I made contact afterwards with the special guest, and I apologised once again, and yet again I got the same message, don't worry about it. And you know what, there's nothing I can do about it, but I'll carry it for the rest of my life, for sure. Sometimes I win and sometimes I learn. In that particular case, I did not win. And I hope I've learned, and I'm putting it out there in the hopes that you learn something from it too. But it also struck me that it's not just in relation to carpentry and not just in relation to making speeches, it's in relation to everything. Fail to prepare and prepare to fail applies to everything. Measure twice and cut once applies to everything. If you're making writing your CV, if you don't put in the preparation in terms of the company that you're applying for, in terms of knowing what they do, well then you're failing to prepare, and therefore you're preparing to fail. If you're going to go to the bank with your business plan and you haven't got your numbers sorted out, well then you're failing to prepare, you're preparing to fail. You've got to measure twice and cut once. Make sure you got your facts straight before you present them wherever it is you want to present them. The point is, when you and I are doing anything whatsoever, we've got an opportunity. Once we make a presentation to somebody, that presentation is out there. Once we say a few words, that's out there. Once we send that email, it's done, it's out there. Fail to prepare, prepare to fail. We need to measure twice and cut once. Before we send that email, we need to read it again. Before we send that important email, perhaps we need to get somebody else to read it. Before we go to the bank with our business plan, we need to make sure that we have our facts straight and that we've got a handle on our numbers. Before we make a presentation to a client to help them with their business in some shape or form using our product or service, we got to make sure that we know enough about the client and their needs so that our proposal is relevant. The last thing we want is to get tripped up sitting across the table from somebody that we're trying to do business with. So fail to prepare, prepare to fail. Measure twice and cut once. And remember, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. I remember some time back having the great fortune of meeting Sir Michael Parkinson, and he said something that will stick with me forever. I didn't apply it, but it'll stick with me forever. He said that whenever he was interviewing somebody, preparation was his secret. He prepared and he prepared and he prepared and he prepared, and he never went into an interview without knowing more about the interviewee than the interviewee knew about themselves. He never went into an interview without knowing more about the interviewee than the interviewee themselves knew. So that's what we're talking about. Sir Michael Parkinson, world-class interviewer. And why is he world-class? Because he prepared and he prepared and he prepared and he prepared. So preparation is the key. Remember, you can never do enough preparation. And as you go out to do business in this next week, please remember my faux pas, learn from it, and measure twice and cut once. And thank you for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colm. I hope and trust you got something from it. If you've enjoyed it and you think somebody else would benefit, I'd be delighted if you'd pass the link on. If it's your first time here and you've enjoyed it and you'd like more, well then go to the homepage, colmobrienmotivation.com, leave me some details, and I'll make sure you get a link like this on a weekly basis. Most importantly, please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week and learn from my mistakes. And then equally as importantly, please come back next week and we'll share another coffee together and I'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. In the meantime, get some good coffee, get some fresh air, get some R&R. If you spend a lot of time alone during the week, I recommend you go meet some people. If you spend a lot of time with people during the week, I recommend you take a little time alone. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organised for the week ahead, prepare, get stuck in, make next week count, and I'll see you here this time next week. Sláinte. I love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.